is your not-so-critical update for Friday, September 17th. Today, Russia gets ready to amp up its censorship efforts. The rise of biometric scanning since 9/11, and poop smearing robots. Now your hosts, Mike Sutton and Peter Lowe.
I'm going to ask you about the origin of that intro music.
Of the intro music?
Yeah.
Oh, it's called StreamBeats. A guy named Harris Heller put it together for streamers to use as background music. And it's licensed royalty-free music you're allowed to use in YouTube videos. And I love it. Everybody should use it. It's actually a super cool business model.
Yeah, really? Wow.
Well, so he releases the music for free and he distributes it through Spotify, and Spotify pays the content creator per play. So he can tell people, hey, go ahead and use it. They let it run on continuous loop in the background of their streams, and he gets paid every time they do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I came across something similar recently when there was some intro music to like a really short snippet of some music to a YouTube video, and in the bottom you have the credits for things like Mike Hale, something that he wrote, and I looked it up, and YouTube has this weird thing where they have like a library of sounds where it's not really credited to anybody, it just shows you what it is. And it was this guy, and he made the song or the track and released it for free.
So, yeah, most of the platforms have some version of royalty-free music that you can use now, mostly for background music. My use is maybe a little bit of a stretch of the intended use, but I think it's okay. I plug it every time. I put it in the notes. I strongly encourage streamers to use it. I use it every time I stream. Very good way to have some kind of ambiance in the background of your streams.
There you go. Tip for any other streamers out there.
I know, it's awesome. Yeah, definitely check out Stream. If you're a streamer, 100% check out StreamBeats. I highly recommend it. So we are here without John today. We were just getting used to him, and then he bails on us.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it's unforgivable, but I suppose we'll let him off this time because,
Because you're about to be out next week, maybe?
Well, maybe. I mean, I think...
Let's not be too hard on him.
You got to... No, right. You got to make sure that it's an acceptable behavior for yourself as well, right?
Sure. All right, we want to jump in here?
Yeah, let's go.
Lots of fun and exciting stories. I think you're kicking us off with a super exciting... We always have such a good news story for our kickoff.
Yeah, this is bad. This is if you haven't heard about this, then you're about to hear about it. It's a new exploit that affects the Apple Messenger service, and that is on everything, all the Apple things. So all the iDevices, iOS and iPhones and iPads and Mac OS, because that has Apple Messenger, and even Apple Watches. And that's just the beginning. The click is, as it says on the screen, a zero-click exploit. So all these devices have Apple Messenger on them, but you might not use them. But it doesn't matter. All that happens to happen is that someone sends you a dodgy attachment, and you're compromised. And this isn't just a hypothetical exploit. This is actually being seen in the wild by in use by the spyware group, NSO Group, who are using it to infect devices and record keystrokes and collect data about you and use it for, sell it. They're a business.
Good times for everyone.
Yeah, this is about as bad as you can get, really.
I mean, yeah. So it's a 0-day, 0-click exploit, which means, as you said, it's already in the wild and no action is required. You just have to be sent one of these messages. It's described as in the article here. It says that the Apple vulnerability has been defined as processing a maliciously crafted PDF may lead to arbitrary code execution. And just a reminder that what this is doing is installing the Pegasus spyware. And Pegasus has been around for a while. We talked about Pegasus, I think, earlier this year. And this is now just another way, that the latest way, maybe even the most sophisticated way, I guess, that the Pegasus spyware is getting distributed. So the spyware itself is
Yeah,
not
but
new, but the exploit that installs it is new.
yeah, and the exploit is separate from the spyware as well. I mean, the exploit exists for anybody to take advantage of. So it's been seen being used by NSO Group, the authors of Pegasus. But you know, I could hack your phone if you haven't updated. Technically, theoretically, I don't know the exact, how to craft the PDF, or I think it's GIFs as well. I think it's like any malicious attachment.
Yeah, it
that
talked
gets
about
processed by
attacking the image processing capabilities
yeah,
of the messenger service.
yeah,
And just
and yeah.
good.
But I mean, it's just horrific. Like, you don't have to do anything. You just have to own a vulnerable device.
Yeah,
And like I update pretty frequently, and basically as soon as I see a notification to update my Mac, I do. And I checked today, and I was out of date, so updated obviously. But
yeah, I had to
it's too
update my
late to say
laptop. I
not to do
updated
it.
my wife's phone, her watch. All of it needed to be updated. Absolutely.
Watch it. What has the world come to when we have to
Update your
get
watch.
hacked by our watches?
I know.
Oh, it's
And it is bad. Here, this was another article from MSN that talked about the payload, I guess you'd call it, of the Pegasus spyware software, and they talk about how can it steal private phone data, targeting messages, passwords, contacts, photos, and whoever initiated the surveillance can turn on cameras or microphones to create covert recordings. And then, relevant to this attack, recent versions have been able to do this without the user having to do anything. It just shows up on the phone. Where at least in the past they were trying to trick you into clicking something with a phishing attack.
Yeah, this is like something out of the movies, isn't it? I mean, this is the guy going and hacking your phone, and suddenly there's a remote camera like looking out into the. I mean, it's just, what can you say, really?
That's almost how I feel about it. It's such a big story, but like, yeah, it's another attack.
Yeah, the thing that gets me, right, the thing that I always think when I come across stuff like this is, so this is the one that we know about, and Pegasus has been around for a while. So what else? What are they using today that we don't know about?
Yeah, and who are they? Also from this same story, they talk about kind of the nature of this NSO group. Their business model is selling this technology to governments who are going to use it to spy on their enemies. And in the article, they talk about how there are huge sums of money in selling autocratic governments this software who are willing to pay to hack their critics. And these mercenary spyware companies devote substantial resources to identifying software vulnerabilities on widely used applications and then packaging those exploits to eager government clients, creating a highly lucrative but widely abused commercial surveillance marketplace. And that's the worst part. I mean, known government surveillance maybe is bad enough. Here, these are governments maliciously tracking their enemies, which I'm sure happens all the time, but it's discouraging to have to read about it.
Yeah, it's almost like you prefer to pretend it doesn't exist. Happiness, ignorance is happiness, kind of thing. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know what's next. We got it's like Skynet has to come online and Terminators get sent back from the future. That's the next step, right?
We're close. We're close. So I guess the bottom line is update your devices. This is a really bad vulnerability. It's been in the wild since February. Update your devices. If you have it's any Mac or Apple product essentially is vulnerable to this. Update your devices. Update. Remember when they used to say like, oh, don't update for a week or two until we see if it's a stable update? Like, now you're just going to get destroyed if you wait.
I can't really comment on that because it happened recently to me in a professional environment, and I was rather irate at the advice I received, and then a week later, conflicting advice, and it was vexing.
to not update on one hand, but to update on the other?
To be told off for updating too soon, and then be told off that I hadn't updated
For not updating fast enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, you can't win either way, right? It's
No,
a
you can't.
lose-lose. There's no right answer.
Yeah.
All right, more fun and games here. Let's see what's up next.
Okay, this is another story for me. Russia is they're not just blocking domains used by Navalny Apps. What they're doing is they've tested blocking access to commercial or big, not commercial, but like massive DNS resolvers like Cloudflare and Google. And the reason is because they want to force people to use ISP DNS servers, so that then they can control those DNS servers and block apps which are related to this Navalny app, which is like a kind of if you know this guy Navalny, he was like the leader of the opposition, and he got poisoned and all sorts of crazy shit. But yeah, so what they've done is they forced the ISPs to block access to the DNS resolvers like Cloudflare's Quad 1 and Google's Quad 8 resolvers. I think they do it at the ISP level. They direct or order the ISP to kind of black hole those IP ranges. And then what happened was they did a test block. So they started blocking access to these resolvers for about 5 hours to see what the impact was, because so many different things rely on these services, especially Google's Quad 8. They wanted to see if it would cause any kind of major infrastructure problems, I guess. And I'm sure that it's going to be coming soon.
Good news, everybody.
Yeah, nation state blocking, nation level blocking, not nation state. Sorry, Russia's a bit more than that. But there's another article that you brought up, which is interesting. It's kind of related, because last year, actually, can you read out the name of the agency? It's the Russian police agency. Because I can. It's Ros. It's the name. It doesn't matter. It's the Ros something. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Basically, last year, they, along with China, proposed blocking the use of secure protocols. So, as it says in the headline here, in particular TLS 1.3 and TLS. So, when you go to a secure web page on the internet, over HTTPS, it uses an underlying encryption layer called TLS, Transport Layer Security. And this encrypts the data that is sent to and from the server, but it doesn't encrypt the headers. So when you go to request a web server, all the metadata is still sent in plain text, especially in particular the host header, which tells you which domain you're looking at. Then TLS 1.3 does away with that with a thing which used to be called ESNI, which is encrypted server name indicator. It's now called ECH, which is encrypted client hello, and it means that the entire request and response is encrypted, so you can't see anything about what's going on. And DOH is another one which encrypts DNS requests and sends them over HTTPS. DOT is encrypted, another type of encrypted DNS. And they talked about this last year. And basically what's happening is that as protocols get more secure and more private and harder to eavesdrop on, the countries like Russia and China and Korea want to, that's no good. So they just block the whole thing.
Yeah. The funny thing that stood out to me from this funny thing, it was the headline, and this is from the ZDNet article. New protocols are hindering surveillance and censorship. I thought that was such a funny way to put it. Hindering surveillance and censorship.
The easy way, the way that this was done mostly before, it was just by DNS level blocking. So they would force the operators of DNS servers to black hole or redirect certain domain names. And that was really easy to implement because it's very, very simple to do. You just change the IP address that's returned for a domain. But things like TLS 1.3 and whatever, they don't let you do that. So, and you can black hole with packet inspection actually, it's not really deep packet inspection, but header inspection for network traffic. You can see that someone's trying to access a blacklisted site because the headers are unencrypted. So yeah.
So just turn those servers off altogether. Oh, and this is what you're referring to. There's a quote later in the article from a guy who's a buddy of Navalny, and he says, "Our IT experts say that Roskomnadzor.
That's the agency I was.
Let's go with that. Roskomnadzor.
Right. Yeah.
Our IT experts say that Roskomnadzor has just tested blocking Google and Cloudflare DNS services on major Russian telecom operators. This literally means that they're ready to knock out half of the internet at once, all because of the Navalny app."
Yeah. So I think it's probably a little bit more than the Navalny app, but that's just what sparked it. You know, their ability to easily block domains and control what people are looking at is being hindered, as they said. It's pretty horrific, but it's becoming more and more standard practice. The interesting thing to me was that ages ago, when DNS over HTTPS became a thing, some rights groups and other people pointed out that what's going to happen is that it will make it more difficult for countries to filter traffic, because they will lose the ability to do DNS blocking. And that's, at the time, it was kind of like theoretical, and everyone was like, that's just like, that doesn't affect me, it's not going to happen. But now it's actually happening, and certain amount of Schadenfreude.
Take away their opportunity to do that.
Yeah, so that they will become even more draconian about how they went around blocking things.
Sure, they just underestimated how far people were willing to go to do this.
Yeah, the thing is, when you talk about DOH as a cool privacy enabling technology, and then someone says, "Oh, it's going to affect people in Russia," the reaction is just, that's not going to happen. You just dismiss it. But
with DOH, you would essentially be bypassing the DNS layer, because the app itself can decide what DNS server it wants to use, in favor of using the system specified DNS or whatever specified at the network level, so it can completely bypass that.
Yeah, that's one issue. And the other issue is that it goes over HTTPS, so it looks like web traffic. So you can't just block access to certain IP addresses because they're web servers, and you don't know that it. There's ways to tell, but again, TLS 1.3 will make that even harder, because you won't even know that it's a DNS request being sent. You would just it looks like a web request, because it is.
And will this technique that they're using now to just black hole those IPs still work?
Yes, because they know where the DOH servers are. What they're doing is they're blocking it for the most popular ones. So it's they don't really care about the edge cases. If 5% of the population or 1% of the population knows how to dick around with their DNS settings and can, even just using a VPN probably would be enough. Right. But they're looking to like the easy, quick. 90% of people won't see this kind of thing, which is effective when you're the size of Russia.
And at least they're providing a convenient alternative.
Yeah. Well, there is that. That's very thoughtful of them, I think.
Yeah, you gotta make it easy. More fun stories.
Yeah, let's go. Because you're up next.
I know this one is my least favorite. My favorite. I don't know. Makes me the angriest. Let's go with that. So here we are in the wake of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. In our short tenure, we've talked about many different stories about biometrics and surveillance and how widespread and problematic they are. But all these retrospectives are coming out now, talking about the long-lasting impact of 9/11. Crooked Media did an episode recently about how 9/11 led in many ways to the broken politics of today, even though the cultivation of the current culture wars goes back as far as Nixon and Reagan. But in this case, Fast Company is looking at 9/11 as the catalyst for today's surveillance state. From the article, they say, uh, on November 14th, California Senator Dianne Feinstein explained in her opening remarks, how could a large group of coordinated terrorists operate for more than a year in the United States without being detected and then get on 4 different airliners in a single morning without being stopped? The answer to this question is that we could not identify them. And the biometrics technology, the state-of-the-art technology of today, really offers us a very new way to identify potential terrorists. And we were off. So now here we are. With this gigantic surveillance state on our hands. There was one comment here about the sensitive biometric records collected by US troops may have fallen directly into the hands of the Taliban. That's actually an article that we talked about when it broke. And it turns out that, according to another article, these devices actually provide only limited access to biometric data that's held remotely in secure servers. The problem is that the Afghan government has been collecting databases containing sensitive personal information that could be used to identify millions of people around the country. That is not necessarily biometric data, but personally identifiable information, name, address, employment history, things like that. So that's the real risk. Still, surveillance, just not what everybody thought it was, where they'd be running around with facial recognition and fingerprint scanners. But continuing, from 9/11, we can trace the root of the idea that fighting terrorism is a question of identity management, and that the best way to determine a person's identity is to build massive biometric databases. Technology developers rose to the occasion, supplying fingerprint readers, iris scanners, and database solutions, winning, and here's the key, billions of dollars in military contracts in the process. And the Department of Homeland Security has built the second largest biometric database in the world. So what do we think about that, Peter?
What's the first largest?
Yeah, actually, again, a question probably answerable by basic research. I failed to do it, so I don't know.
No, that's fine. It was kind of a flip question. God, Mike, you pick and don't you? Jesus, this is a literally depressing article. It just makes me sad inside, and I don't know how to react to it. It's kind of it's so true, and the thing is that nothing that we say or anything anybody else has said has made any difference, and that's the kind of makes, I don't know, I feel helpless because it just like we're still changing our fucking shoes at the airport. Like when are we gonna? It's 20 years on. Do we still need to keep doing that? It's security theater, and I think that it's theater on the one hand that makes us look like we're doing something to prevent terrorism, but on the other hand, it enables the people to go out and make shitloads of money because they've got the newest, latest tech to collect data on people and to track them and create these databases and identify them. And then that's all fine and great, and they make their money, but then it gets into the hand of bad guys, and then it's too late.
Yeah, I think there's...
And they've made their money by this point. They don't care.
It's hard to let go of. Everybody's making piles of money off it. The politicians, the companies, the contractors, everybody's making money. Plus, who wants to be the one to say, let's stop doing it, only to then maybe have something happen and your name is tied to it? Like the fear of that probably holds us in place as much as anything.
Well,
if they even see it as a problem, probably they don't even think that far. The question is like, why would I get rid of it? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
What do you even mean? I don't understand the question.
I guess it's, I don't think they do think that far, but like, that's the kind of the lobbyist article, the argument. I mean, that's the, when they're taking someone to a very expensive dinner and saying, hey, vote for this bill because that allows us to make this money and it doesn't regulate this technology. It's like, well, you don't want to be the one linked with the next bomb or whatever. It's all kind of very insidious
and we've talked about some of the problems. We've talked about cases with I always want to say shot caller. It's not shot caller. What is it? Shot finder. AI, not really AI, but like an automated system for um, pinpointing gunshots based on triangulation with microphones around the city. We've talked about stories
Yeah.
where facial recognition gets the wrong person arrested. We talked about like this Pentagon using just mass amounts of data to try and create predictive algorithms to find out where the next event is going to be. All this is just feeding it. It's snowballed out of control. Like, I think that's an understatement. It's interesting to think about how we got here too, though, because remember that 9/11 still was in the shadow of the Y2K scare. And this is just following the bust of the dot-com bubble at the end of 2020. In mid or early 2020, pets.com had just raised like $82 million. And then
Yeah.
by the end of that year, just a few months before 9/11, well, not a few months, I guess, 9 months, the NASDAQ had lost over 50% of its value by the end of the year. And, technology like the iPhone didn't even come out until 2007. The first iPhone was only released in June of 2007. So we think of, I think it's easy to think of how technologically advanced the world feels today because we're all walking around with smartphones and always on internet and streaming services all over the place. None of that stuff really, I certainly wasn't mature. Maybe it was starting to exist at that point. But at the time it was kind of novel. So it felt like, man, we've got these new capabilities. We really should jump in and take advantage of this. The lobbyists representing the companies who wanted to do it were all for it. The politicians who wanted to take those lobbyists' money were all ready to do it. And at the time, we probably weren't able to see how, disastrously bad it could turn out. So here we are.
And the people who do kind of try and point out these the potential issues with shit like this are labeled as kind of extremists or scaremongers or or elitists or whatever. People are saying this is bad and can be used for bad things, get labeled as kind of wackos.
But
and to be fair, it's difficult to tell the difference. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's like that's the trick, though, right? We talked about the Apple CSAM thing a couple times, childhood sexual abuse material. If you have the ability to identify that, you could say the moral thing is to do so, even though other way there could potentially be other harms. Like, which is the bigger harm? Not doing something that could prevent childhood sexual abuse, or doing something to prevent sexual abuse that could have other unintended consequences?
That's a wrong way of framing the wrong question to be asking. I think.
Okay.
I think the question is how do you do this? So there is a way to identify this material. So how do you do it that doesn't infringe or infringes on the least possible rights, or has no way of being abused, or is there another technology that can go along with it? Is there some other process that can be put in place? Is there regulation? Is there something? I don't know. I don't have the answer to it. I'm just saying that if you frame the question of like, oh well, what we have to do this or this, it doesn't give the option for anything else. And if you only have those two options, then one does seem like it's sensible, but it's not the only two options.
No, and I think there's a question of effectiveness too. In the case of like the airport surveillance, I don't know that there's really any evidence to show that has been successful in any way beyond what we've been doing before. Yes, people have hijacked planes, but how many hijackings have been stopped because of these vastly expensive, vastly invasive programs of mass surveillance?
It's difficult to prove a negative, but and I think one of the things I've heard is that, well, the FBI or the security authorities wouldn't actually release the information about any thwarted attacks. So I mean that's kind of fair, but yeah, I mean it's fair enough.
But even still, it's easy to say like, yes, it's an invasion of privacy. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it's expensive, but maybe it is working. So I guess we live with that trade-off. Like that's probably where most people are.
I guess. I think, yeah. probably. Same with tracking, eh? You know, it's invasive and it's
See?
but hey,
What are you gonna do?
targeted ads. There's no way to get around it. It's either targeted ads or it's
Right?
what do you call it? It's anarchy, communism. That's what it is.
That's
It's
what
one
I'm
of the two,
saying.
anarchy or communism. I don't know which one you want. I saw a YouTube. Do you know the guy on the Daily Show? The fingers, the pulse.
Yeah. Jordan
Jordan Clapper.
yeah.
Yeah. I saw he had a clip of him at some Trump rally, and they had like in the same shot, someone going anarchy, and then there's another person going, "This is communism." I think there was even one banner that had it both on the same thing. Just anything.
It doesn't take a lot to expose the hypocrisy, or maybe hypocrisy is the wrong word. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But inconsistencies, ignorance, lack of information, lack of logic. I liked your hand gesture for fingering the pulse of democracy. Is that how you do it?
That's how I fingered the pulse. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, moving on.
It should be like this way.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Let's stop there.
Feel stuck now.
Right.
I don't know. All of these stories are like so big, it almost feels hard to talk about. I'm just like, yeah, it's this giant problem. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, we need to do like a gaming podcast or something.
I know. We should have a privacy expert here.
Yeah. Oh dear.
All right. You want to talk about? Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
Nothing in any way positive.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, how do we prevent ourselves? Well, how do we undo this? How do we go back? There's one. I know this is not really related, but there's one kind of example of undoing this kind of progressive and systemic damage that we've done. It's not related to tech, really, but in
climate
Holland.
Change.
No, well, climate change.
We've not undone that at all.
All right. No. That may be necessary quite soon. But the one example I wanted to talk about just quickly is in Holland, where they made bike lanes everywhere. Have you ever been to Holland?
Where they made what?
Bike lanes, cycling.
Oh, yeah. No, I have not.
Okay, so
I'm an American. We don't travel.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot.
And who even knows what language they speak there?
It's all Dutch to me, mate. Yes, they have cycle lanes there, and they're everywhere. And the bicycles, I'm sure you've heard this, they are the kings of the road. And they really are. Like, one time I was at a massive roundabout with nobody there, and I was on my bike, and I saw a tram coming, and they're like 5 tons, these massive vehicles, and I just stopped instinctively. And then I was there kind of, twiddling my thumbs for a minute, and then I realized that the tram had stopped and was waiting for me because I had right of way. And the 50 people on the tram, the tram driver was just like, "Yep, come on," So they really are kings of the road, and there are cycle lanes absolutely everywhere. Like, the whole country is covered with them. It's amazing. It's it's good for the environment. It's cheaper. It's good, healthier. Everything about it is brilliant. Plus, cycling's fun. I mean, part of it is that it's such a flat country that they were able to do this. But here's the thing. It wasn't always like that. And they actually, during the 60s, they had a lot of protests, and there was, a kind of an uprising. It was a bunch of hippies, but, hippies are good sometimes. My parents are hippies. Yeah. And they had all these massive protests. And what happened was the country actually started investing in cycling infrastructure, and since the 60s it's slowly progressed to the point that it's at now. So it is possible to undo these massive, because when I live in places like Malta, and I go to London or other big kind of metropolises, Malta's not a metropolis by any means, but you know what I mean. I always think, oh man, it's impossible to undo this, but is possible. So back to the whole disaster that's biometrics. Like, how do we step back from it? How do we go back? I don't really see it a way myself, but must be a way, right?
Well, I mean, there's a couple issues. One is that I mean, the political class, the ruling class, and the people benefiting from the markets, the people who control the wealth, are completely detached from everyone else. Totally bifurcated system. So the people who are setting the rules aren't affected for the most part by any of these rules. So if you talk to the public, there's a lot of support for not having these programs, but we're totally disconnected from the people who can actually make the decision to do those programs. The solution to that is for people to just get more involved. And I think particularly locally, it's easy and fun, if fun's the right word, to pay attention to national politics or international politics, but to pay attention to local politics and school board meetings and township meetings and local governors races and mayoral races, like those are critically important races that there's very little energy for the most part, at least in the US. And that's where you can really make a difference. So I think it has to do with understanding how the power dynamics work and intentionally working the system to get your people into those roles. I mean, it's not a technological issue. It's a political, it's a social issue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we need a social or political answer or solution to a technological problem. Or is that a too simplistic
I mean,
way
that's always
putting
going
it?
to be the pull, right? Like, if you can do something technologically, especially if you can make money from doing it, people are going to do it.
Yeah.
To
Yeah. That's true.
stop somebody from doing it, I mean, you could pass a law against it. They still have the technology. They still are largely immune to the consequences in most of these cases. So are they going to stop doing that thing, or are they just going to find a more creative way to do it on the sly? Like, you can't stop it. I always think like there's got to be a cloned human out there walking around, because I'm sure we have the technology to do it. And even though it's illegal, somebody's done it. Same thing
Somebody has definitely
with
done,
this
yeah.
technology, like or like the social media stuff. I know that you watched that Social Dilemma documentary, and they talk about how these systems were designed to manipulate people intentionally before they recognized fully what the consequences were, and it worked. And now they don't know how to stop the system that they created. It's grown a mind of its own. So you're trying to deal with a technology that essentially humanity is not ready for, but is already here, and we're already fully adopted. Hopefully we can just grow into it a little bit before it kills us all.
There's another attitude or a sort of way of looking at it, which is that at least so far, no matter how messed up how we've messed up as a species, we've somehow kind of managed to fix it. No matter how big the mistakes are, we kind of figured a way out. Like I hope that climate change is there's going to be a massive shift in how people think about it, because it really is becoming such a serious problem now, and it's not going to get any better for a long time. And so the more people are affected by it, we're going to suddenly, everyone's going to scream, holy what? And then there's actually going to, we'll see some significant changes, but I don't know. Maybe there's going to be one.
They're forced.
Yeah, but that's sort of my point. Like,
as soon as they have to relocate Washington, D.C. because sea levels have risen, then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh my God, this is a terrible problem. We've got to do something about this.
Right. So that's sad. And that's horrible to think about. So let's move to what I'm trying to say is that at that point, humanity will do the Star Trek thing of having that spark of genius where they will figure something out. I mean, I think that's all I can hope for anyway.
It sounds very optimistic.
We've done it before, right?
I don't think we talked about Jeff Bezos going into space, near space, I guess. And when he came back, he talked about how they need to cultivate space so they can send people to work there. He didn't say we need to send people to vacation there or we need to be able to send people there to live great lives. He said it's a terrible, desolate place where almost nobody could survive. Let's send our workers there. Like, working for Amazon isn't hard enough already.
What are you gonna do?
These are the guys that are going to solve that problem for us.
Don't hate the player, man. Hate the game.
Oh, I do. Don't get me wrong.
All right, yeah, okay.
All right, more fun stuff. Who's SolarWinds? Are you SolarWinds?
Yeah, I did suggest this story. I like this. There is the SEC, I think it is investigating the solar. Is it the SEC? It was a few days ago that I saw this. Yes, the SEC are investigating the SolarWinds issue event from earlier this year, and they are requesting all sorts of information about data breaches, which are not necessarily linked to the specific SolarWinds thing. And it's scaring some executives because they might end up being personally liable. It might turn out that they fucked up and didn't disclose it, and all sorts of personally identifiable PII is floating out there, and it's all their fault. And I love the fact that they're just a bit scared about that. They might go to jail for it. I don't genuinely think anything is going to happen, sadly, but, you know.
Obviously. Well, so the risk is it's an SEC investigation into the SolarWinds hacking operation, incidentally, because very high-profile clients were affected. 18,000 users of SolarWinds, customers, downloaded compromised software, including Microsoft, Cisco, Intel, and parts of the federal government, which got everybody's attention, which is why the SEC is looking into it. And the issue is they're asking for companies to disclose any data breaches or ransomware attacks since October of 2019, which they're supposed to be reporting anyway, but they haven't been reporting. But they also haven't been asked, so it's kind of a lie of omission. But now the SEC has specifically asked, and their dilemma is, well, now we either have to lie and say it didn't happen, which now is a lie of commission, or we have to disclose that it did happen, which we were also supposed to have disclosed already, and our shareholders, which is probably where the real problem is, then can sue them for violating their obligations to the shareholders and putting the company at stake and not maximizing money. So I think that's the real risk. They're much less concerned probably about getting in trouble with the SEC as they are getting in trouble with their shareholders, which is where all their money comes from.
I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think they will outright lie? I think they're probably a mix, actually. Some people will decide to just.
My guess is the SEC and these companies will quietly negotiate a deal that allows them to confidentially disclose only for the very limited scope of this specific investigation, so that they can show that they've cooperated. The SEC can show that they've done their thorough, in-depth investigation, and everybody can be happy and ignorant and rich.
And you know what's so sad about that is that you're probably 100% right.
Yeah, we've only seen it a dozen times.
Okay.
We always get to this point in the show where it's like, oh my God, we're in trouble.
I don't know why do we do this, Mike? Why do we just keep depressing ourselves? And I mean, I don't say it's kind of nice to think that some people might be personally liable. And I think one thing that stood out to me from the article was that they're not going to be, the SEC is just asking right now. So I'm kind of hoping that they won't, and then the SEC will force them to, and then it will become something that is sort of standard practice. But you're right, I probably won't get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, certainly all the lawyers are also getting rich, but running around trying to say like, we're not going to say that we had a breach, but if we did, what would be the implications? It's disastrous. So why do we do this show? That's an interesting question.
I think
I don't know if
I
we've
think
ever
it's
talked
one of the
about it.
few. No, it is a good question actually. I think it's partly because I like talking about these stories in depth, and I don't really get an opportunity to do that. I mean, I don't think even if there wasn't a pandemic, I would have that much opportunity, because people out there don't really care about this stuff. I don't have that kind of circle of friends, I guess. I don't live in, where is it, San Francisco or New York or something, where all my friends are like that. And I think if I did, I'd probably be wanting to do like a farming show or something. So, so yeah, I talk about TV shows and stuff with my wife, and then I part of my life becomes thinking about these stories. I think the research part of it is nice as well, looking into the stories in the background. And you joked about us not doing any research, but we had something like 20 stories on the spreadsheet this week. And it was great to look into them and think about them and what's some of the most important ones and what, and I love chatting to you as well. I think that getting to speak to someone else who's got a different perspective and is smart and what's the word? Lucid.
Careful.
Not lucid, but like can speak. Very ironic. I can't think of the word right now. Yeah, I think it's good. I'm looking forward to the day when other people recognize that we've got something to say. I mean, some people have. We've had a few more subscribers, which is great. So hi guys, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and yeah, I enjoyed the process and the results.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation. The technology, obviously, I've been interested in for a long time. I do think it's an interesting maybe contrast between how each of us thinks about security and privacy.
Yeah, definitely, because you're a marketing droid, and
Well, I started as a tech. I was a web developer for most of my career. Ran a managed services
willingly
company.
went over to marketing.
I did. Well, I was building my IT company and couldn't grow it for shit, and realized, oh, to grow a business, I don't need to be a good technician. I need to be a good salesperson and marketer. So I had to start to learn to do that because I didn't want to do IT. I wanted to build an IT business, and those are two completely different skill sets. So that really did set me on the path to getting very interested in marketing. I'm very interested in the psychological aspects of marketing, how it works, why it works.
Yeah.
And so the overlap with security and privacy, I think, is really interesting because, yes, I want to collect those data points to understand what makes people tick and how I can motivate them, and get my message in front of people and optimize conversion rates and all these things. But I also recognize that the government collecting billions of data points, biometric and personally identifiable information is possibly less than ideal.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And
diplomatic way, but
naturally, so my personality type is a chaotic debater. So I like to, I learn and absorb information by talking through it with other people and, arguing, taking the other side just to like understand what that looks like. And along the way, hopefully we talk about some interesting articles that are bringing awareness of what's in current events to people's minds and enjoying the conversation along the way.
Yeah, so I read an interesting point the other day. There was one, I think I was actually looking into how to promote podcasts or something like that. And someone said the best way to have a successful anything is just do something that you enjoy for 10 years, and then it will become successful in the end. Which has kind of held true to me in my life, accidentally and deliberately. Like my block list, which is I've been doing for years because I think it's a good thing, and I wasn't too much effort, and I kind of enjoyed the process of investigating tracking domains and finding new ones and validating them and interacting with people who used it. And one day it got me a job, and I've had maybe a couple of $1,000s total from it in donations over the whole time. I've given half of them back. Not back to the people who gave it to me, to the people who are hosting. But it's just, I think things like that, where you kind of enjoy the thing itself, if you do a good job at them, then they'll either become something successful by another metric, or they'll just be successful because you enjoy doing it. That's all that you get out of it, you know? It's worthwhile to do it just simply because of that.
I have a friend who kind of came to Facebook and said, you know, I have this thing that I've been doing for all these years. I love doing it. I've been really good at it, but I feel like it's kind of getting stale, and I don't want to give it up, but I don't really enjoy it anymore. And I have been thinking about it all week and realized that, like, I've had a couple major hobbies in my life. I used to be super into basketball. I was then, you know, into wakeboarding for a
Really?
long time, into paintball for a long time, into I do a lot of streaming stuff that I really enjoy now, the triathlon stuff. And every step of the way, I mean, I've almost completely moved on. And I'll think like, oh, I should go back and do that thing, but I don't ever feel like I really should have stuck with it. Like, it just felt like it came to a natural conclusion, and I got interested in something else and went and did that. Um, and I remember this because when he started getting into this hobby, photography, I had been kind of encouraging him, like, hey, you could make a little bit of money doing this. Do, you know, charge for some shots, do this, do that. And he said, I don't want it to turn into a job. I just want it to be something that I enjoy. And I really, like, having watched him go through this, I realized, yeah, just do things that you enjoy. Same like with the streaming. I have a whole little studio set up. Nobody really ever sees it. I describe it as my, like, you know how old guy, I don't know, maybe you don't. Old guys used to have like these uh, model train things built out in their
Oh
basements with like
I know.
houses and trees and elaborate tracks and all this stuff. You'd never know it was down there unless they invited you down to their basement to show it to them. They just do it for themselves. And I feel like that's how
Yeah.
my studio is. I build out my studio just for myself. I'm the only one who sees it. I do very little actual streaming until now we're doing this show, but it's just fun. It's a hobby. I like it.
You're a modern day model train enthusiast. That's what
That's
you are.
right.
And I love you for it, man. It's beautiful. It's good to find joy in the world,
Yeah.
just from and doing something.
It took me a long time to figure that out, though.
Do you ever? Oh yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Do you ever regret any of the things that you put time into?
Regret not doing them anymore?
No, yeah, exactly.
No, it's always been a very kind of organic transition. I used to, play basketball 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week. I'd go play for 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday morning. And then I got introduced to wakeboarding, and we got a boat, and then I spent my Saturdays doing that. And I never really thought about basketball very much. We had my
Cool.
son was no longer feasible to have the boat. So I started playing paintball and would go do that every weekend. So I never really felt like, I look back, I see the pictures and think like, oh, it'd be cool to go do that again. But I never feel like, oh, why did I give that up? I really lost out on something. It was never taken away from me. I just moved on to some next thing.
That's cool, man. That's cool. There's only one thing in my life that I wish that I'd kept doing, and it was when I was at school, I studied art, and I was actually quite good at it. I was not like if I thought of like a dragon, I couldn't draw you a dragon, but I was pretty accurate at copying things. I could put an apple in front of me and I could draw the apple very, very well. And I don't think I could do that anymore. It was, and I left school and they threw away all my art, and I just didn't draw anything much since then. I've got a few doodles that I've done, but I kind of one day wish I could go back to that. Maybe I will one day. I enjoyed it because it's part of being good at something is good, is nice. It's nice to be good at something. It's that feeling of kind of instinctively knowing what you're doing and knowing that it's good is a nice feeling, I think. But it takes a lot of effort and a lot of practice. Usually, I'm not naturally good at very much at all. But if you do practice something, then well, that and my great hair, obviously. But yeah, once you get to that point, it's great. Street Fighter 2, I was really good at as well.
Street Fighter 2,
yeah, I was really, really good at that. I was unbeatable. Yeah.
Name's still on the arcade
I don't really
machine someplace.
on the Super
PGL.
NES that was there.
Oh.
Probably, yeah.
And I mean,
is.
that's probably a lot of why we do the show, because we're both interested, passionate about these topics. We enjoy doing it, so we'll keep doing it. Are we still recording, by the way? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. If
Should we
anybody's
wrap
listening
this
to
up?
this, I mean, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay. So a fun story
Last story.
to wind down the day, and I don't know whose this even was, so we'll just jump in here. I think you shared this tweet, super funny, about Roomba using AI to avoid smearing dog poop all over your house, which on one hand feels like kind of
a real problem. It's
yeah,
a real
I mean,
problem.
it feels stupid, but yeah, it's a real problem. The way they write the article so earnestly. And in November 2014, Chantel Darby awoke to an excrement-fueled nightmare. I remember walking into my office and it looked like a murder scene, but with poop. They threw out a rug, power cords, and after her husband tried and failed to clean it, the Roomba. She and her husband bought another Roomba and began using it during the day, but the same thing happened.
I love it. Have you ever seen pictures of a room that's been destroyed by a robot vacuum cleaner because it caught some shit and smeared it everywhere?
I feel like I should have Googled that more before I jumped in here today.
Oh yeah, no, do definitely Google that. It's horrific. It's like someone smeared paint all over the floor, except it's brown and obviously it's going to stink. And it's so difficult because the Roomba gets everywhere, right? So it gets like under the little nooks and crannies and gets that, really spreads it around. You have to go around and clean up after your robot cleaner, and it's not, thankfully, never happened to us. But
it's hard to imagine something worse. The CEO of iRobot told CNN,
solution,
while a power cord is the most common obstacle for a Roomba to get caught on, pet poop is the most spectacularly bad.
In so many ways.
I'll buy that.
Yeah. Great solution that they come up with though, right?
And in the article, they talk about training this AI. They try to figure out how to solve this problem with different sensors, cameras, whatever, and realized that what they had to do is actually beef up its computing power enough that they could give it the ability to make these distinctions, and started building giant data sets of poop models so that they could train this thing not to run over poop.
So on the one hand, we have technology being used to create massive databases of biometric information, which is being used by terrorist governments. And on the other hand, we've got millions of dollars being invested in AI that can recognize shit on the floor.
And what kind of biometric data are we giving them about our dogs?
I know. You're going to get Facebook on the case next. Facebook are going to buy Roomba, buy iRobot, and they're going to use all this data that is collected to infer details about your diet and it's like, when do you like to buy prunes every month? Like, if this person is not eating enough fiber,
like targeted for specific dog food ads.
Yeah.
Disaster.
Oh,
disaster. The thing that I thought, like the analogy, or I don't know analogy, but I thought of this kind of in the same category as Tesla's self-driving cars. Like training a self-driving car, for some reason in my mind, feels similar to training a vacuum not to run over poop.
There's a little guy on the back of the Roomba going, no, stop. Warning, avoid that big breath. Can you imagine a Roomba the size of a car? I mean, I suppose technically, if I was Elon Musk and I had that amount of money, I would build a Roomba the size of a car just to see if it could, just to show that it could be done.
Well, they have the lawn mowing ones, right?
Are they that size though?
Not the size of a car, but I'm sure larger than I assume larger than the size of the house vacuuming ones.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's yeah, well, yeah.
But they do feel pretty confident in this model. They talk about how they started by buying the best possible artificial dog poop and then crafting it out of Play-Doh and painting it by hand to build this data set. And they say now they're...
And I assume at some point they must have tested it in a real life scenario, right?
Well,
on actual
much
2.
like the Tesla, it is only driver assisted self-driving, so level 4, because it will work with the accompanying smartphone app to alert the vacuum's owner along with a picture of the obstacle in question, at which point the owner can decide via the app if they want to contribute to the robot's training data or not, or whether the robot should proceed with the process.
Oh no, I sorry, I meant that when they were testing whether this was effective technology or not, they must have actually had a dog make a mess on the floor and then let the Roomba loose to see if it really worked. I mean, sure, you can use mock poop, plasticine or whatever, but at some point you got to see if it works in the real world, right? That must be a fun job.
Yeah.
Hey, like you were joking about it before. Hey, QA guys, we've got to.
It's not identifying these specific textures. We need to retrain it a little bit more.
Yeah, we think it's ready, but we need to be sure. Can you like round up some dogs and get the
Yeah, I wonder if it has the same trouble distinguishing between different species of dogs. Like we see with human facial recognition, struggling with different facial skin tones.
Well, yeah, different volumes as well. I know that I've heard dog owners complain about the size of the deposits that are made left.
They would need a large data set, I'm sure, to be able to do this effectively.
Yeah, a lot of dogs over a lot of period of time, different diets, different dogs, different room sizes.
For sure.
For sure. To be effective.
All right, I think we got there. We finished on a positive note. We had a bunch of shit articles to talk about. I was starting to feel like really kind of angry about halfway through there, but we pulled it out.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I don't feel like we usually have that many like just brutally hard bad news articles. Do we?
Well, it's usually at least one.
Yeah.
But
3 back to back.
It's difficult to stay away from. I mean, and I learned something from that week that I tried to come up with positive privacy articles, and it was such a struggle. Like, it's hard, man. It's hard to keep positive, to stay positive. I think that's another reason I do this podcast, is because I and every single time I end up laughing a lot. And there's few things in life which reliably make me laugh. So
this is a lot of fun.
Thanks, man.
I hope people enjoy it. I enjoy it. Thank you. We'll enjoy it if John comes back too. We'll get him involved. So, all right. Guess that's it.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.